Hi everyone, and welcome to another Future Design Forum 10-minute fireside Q&A session hosted by myself, Andy Smith, co-founder of TDA Creative, the design, tech and product talent agency. I'm delighted today to be joined by Wayne Matamoros, previously of Fjord and currently head of the US for Empathy, a design and innovation consultancy in New York. Wayne, thanks so much for joining us today. I much appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I'm super excited. We talked about this for quite a while, so I'm really happy to be here speaking with you today.
Yeah, and look, I'm also excited, and I know we're going to delve into your thoughts around Latin American design talent, which is super interesting. So looking forward to hearing that. But before we go there, would you mind giving us a little lowdown in your career to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll skip through some of my earlier career things that I did, such as working at a tire shop, which has actually shaped me in a lot of ways. But really, my design career started when I was with Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And so one of the really eminent institutions, this is where essentially the Keeling curve that showed the correlation between CO2 and global warming came from.
Right.
But I started a digital group there, and so this is back in the late '90s, which ages me. And I was actually had designers and programmers working for me, and I was actually using a lot of design methods, but there wasn't a name for them yet. And so after doing that for about 7 years, I got my MBA in New York. And what I found out during my MBA is I hated finance, didn't want to do marketing, didn't want to do traditional management consulting. And the more that I learned, and now this is 2007 to 2009, the design industry was just really kind of blowing up at that moment, getting into the boardroom and into the C-suites, and it was something that I had done some of, but I also found that there was this enormous opportunity. So what I did is from there I went to Interbrand for a little bit, SY Partners, did great, big transformational strategy, and then went to RGA where I got to work on actual products, like physical and digital products.
Great.
And then, as you mentioned, ended up at Fjord. And Fjord, I was there. Is very formational. This is really, it was, I think I joined a 180-person organization, or I interviewed with a 180-person organization, joined a 500,000 plus one because the acquisition happened.
Sure. Okay.
But over those next 7 years, I was actually able to really be involved in taking strategic design into a lot of major corporations, even helping to design the way that Accenture does consulting globally and
Yeah.
integrating more design kind of methods. And that was a wonderful experience. Like I said, very formative. But really, my intention had always been to go into impact, and so I ended up going to a Reasonable Group, which is kind of a impact venture kind of accelerator and VC, and then was freelancing and recently encountered Empathy, which I can talk about a little bit later. But essentially, I'm back squarely in the design space, still focused on a lot of impact themes,
Yeah.
but really excited to be kind of like back in working with designers in the day to day and doing like true strategic design work.
Great. Well, they're lucky to have you back, that's for sure. And I know from your
We'll see.
I know from previous, you're very big on the strategy around design as well, and that big impact piece. That's great. And we previously mentioned about Latin American design talent. Where's your passion for Latin American design talent come from, and why do you have such a passion for it?
Yeah, first of all, disclaimers that I am from Latin America. I was born in Costa Rica, so there's definitely going to be something there. And I was also raised right by the border in California, but right 5 minutes from Mexico. So
Brilliant.
I'll put that bias kind of aside for a moment. When I was with Fjord, I actually helped lead an acquisition of a firm in Latin America. And so I was spending a lot of time down there. And when we were acquiring this firm, I was just getting to know a lot of the people, seeing a lot of the work in the different, they were in, I think, 5 or 6 countries at the time. And I think it just blew me away the level of like depth and sophistication of the design that they were doing. And the reason I think is surprising is because we weren't getting that exposure. And until I actually went down there and started spending time in Costa Rica, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, et cetera, I don't think that I really recognized how brilliant the talent was. So I think this is now going back 6 or 7 years, or at least 6 years, I believe. Since then, because I established all these contacts, I've been doing a lot more work across Latin America and working with people. And I think that there's just this, what I found is that there's kind of a resilience and adaptability And some of that has
Yeah.
come out of unfortunate circumstances of the geopolitical situations. But what I started to see is that there's just this creative kind of adaptability where big shifts happen in the government, market, and the currency, whatever it might be. And instead of just kind of sitting back and saying like, "Oh, we're frozen. What do we do?" The attitude is much more just like, okay, it's happening. What are we going to do? Let's fix this.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I think it's just that spirit and kind of level of creativity that was just, it continues to inspire me and has driven a lot of, where my career direction since then has been going.
Okay. You probably partly answered the next question, though. We'll see. Um, Latin America has often been known as production outsourcing destination.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? And with your latter day experience, what do you
Yeah.
think is changing?
Yeah. I mean, I think that unfortunately, a lot of it comes from a little bit of, a bias towards the North. We often hear about the global South and the global North, and I think that there's been for a long time this bias of anything that's south of the equator is offshoring. So I think that there is actually definitely kind of a cultural bias. I think that that's something that has changed. One of the things that I've seen happen, particularly in the design space, is that a lot of programs that emerged. I mean, Colombia, you have EAFIT and Universidad de los Andes, and then you have, UNAM, Monterrey in Mexico, Buenos Aires, et cetera. You have these programs that have developed really sophisticated design education.
Mm,
And so I think that's one thing. You start to see these programs coming out that are really doing deep design education.
yeah.
I think the other thing too is that English has become something that's becoming standardized as part of the education process as well. And
Okay.
so because English is such a predominant business language, a lot of the people I've dealt with in Latin America, and it's funny because I usually deal with them only in Spanish, but as I've seen them in situations there's English involved, their level of English is sometimes embarrassingly good in that they use words that I have to ask them like, but what is that word?
Right.
So
Okay.
I think that that's also as well as that the education in terms of English is something else. And then as I mentioned before, I mean, I think just some of this the spirit and the attitude and
Yeah.
everything is that people are starting to see just really high levels of competence and expertise. And so you're just seeing more and more of that influencing here. I think you're seeing more innovations that are making their way up here or even kind of leapfrogging what's done. And so I think it's just that really the perception is the biggest factor more than anything
Right.
that has changed.
That's great. Education, perception of the language.
Yep.
Good. Good. Okay. Um, Not focusing just on Latin American design talent, but in the kind of technology area we're in now, what's exciting you most about design currently?
It's interesting. I think that design, as we know, has gone through ups and downs. And I think, though, that more recently, I think there was what you could call a re-recognition of the power of design. And I think, especially over these past few months, and obviously you can attest to this, but there's been reemergence of design hiring. But I think that the positions that they're being hired into are often more integrated into the business and into the organization in ways they weren't before. It's no longer just this little kind of side,
Yeah.
kind of cool thing, but you're actually seeing a lot of really important kind of positions and integrations where designers are now influencing the businesses and the way that they operate. And you hear a lot as well. I mean, I think that there's been this evolution where you hear a lot of executives and people who aren't necessarily in design using design language, and insisting on having designers or insisting on using methodologies to understand better the customer and the
Yeah.
user. And so I think for me, it's kind of just design. Like I said, there's been a little bit of turbulence, but what I'm starting to see now is that design is being re-recognized, but it's being seen much more as a core function than kind of this like, this pretty thing
Yeah.
that enhances experience. And I think that for me is exciting because I think for too long we sat on the cusp of business, or organization, for NGOs and things of that sort. And I think that now actually it's driving. It's like it's one of the drivers. And I know
Yeah.
it's organization to organization. Some people might dispute that, but more and more people I'm talking to are saying it's like, no, I'm being asked about how we can increase revenue as a design challenge. It's no
Yeah,
longer
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
how can I just make a great experience? And I think that's a big shift in the way it's
I,
been. So
I,
yeah, that to me is extremely exciting.
I think that's not only exciting and great to hear, but it can bring some real optimism from what has been, for a lot of design quite concerning. Look, let's be frank. AI, I think a year ago, 6 months ago, was creating a lot of anxiety in the market, and I'm not saying it's not
Yeah,
anymore, but I think the challenges create opportunities, and those challenges and opportunities don't just sit with design; they also sit with tech and product.
yeah,
So I think the solutions and the opportunities coming from that, as you say, if they can bring those, three product, tech, and design closer together, as
yeah,
a whole, that's a really strong positive. Okay, good. I
yeah.
like that.
No,
I
no,
like
I
that.
think so. Yeah,
And
yeah, and I do think we're seeing that. Yeah.
yeah, good. And look, talking of designers and perhaps more junior midweight designers, who are still looking to navigate their career and seeing a potentially different career path, and talking about a modern design ecosystem and the maturity of design roles to work with technology
Hmm.
is a whole nother conversation. But what
Yeah.
advice do you have for those up and coming designers at the moment?
It's a good question. I mentor a lot of young designers, especially young designers of color, to try and diversify more the space. And I think right now, because of this turbulence over the past, as you mentioned, like 6 months or a year, especially, one piece of advice is stay true to design. I think that there were, and for obvious reasons, and I understand like economics also drives some decision making, but design works, design's important. Design is going to become, even in the age of AI, it's going to become more important that we understand what is that human layer, that can leverage AI, and how do you design that effectively. And so I think whereas some people I know who were like really great designers and love design were saying, yeah, I think I'm going to go into product management, or I'm going to go into something, I think there was and again, there's some economic factors that I wouldn't blame anybody if it's what you have to do. But I think for people who are coming up, young people who are coming up and looking to go into design, I would say like, stay on that track. Design relevance is going to increase. I'm confident in that. I'm seeing that in the marketplace, because design works, because design is powerful, and design adapts to new technologies, and it adapts to new market conditions, new cultural conditions, and that's what the power of design is.
Yeah,
So I think for me, it's like, stay true to design, and keep moving forward with it. And you are going to find opportunities. And yes, you're going to have to hustle. And yes, you're going to have to bring in other understandings of different aspects of business, and things of that sort. But I'm a true believer that, that design as an industry, as a discipline, as a profession, is going to get bigger. It's going to be more rewarding, more impactful, than ever. Then yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, and so I think it's a little bit of my, I think it's a little bit of my pep talk, just because over this past year of, as I said, mentoring, and then just seeing so much negativity around design.
Yeah,
Design's not relevant. It's not this, and it's, and I think for me, I've been trying to do as much as I can to counter that, because it's self-perpetuating.
yeah,
It's almost like designers, we became so negative that we started convincing people who hire designers to not hire designers, because we were doing, we were out there kind of almost like bashing ourselves, and then wondering why we weren't being offered jobs. So this is part of my campaign to absolutely counter that.
good, good. And talking of campaigns and new ventures, your new venture of empathy, am I right by saying you're looking to utilize that brilliant Latin American design talent with the US
Yeah,
business?
actually, yeah, no, absolutely. So actually, several of the founders, there's 5 partners in Empathy, and they're all based in Latin America right now. I'm the first U.S. Partner, and they're people that I knew from my Fjord years, and then Empathy Medellin, which is where the brand came from. I've gotten to know Sandra and Juan there. When I was first invited to become part of the company, I already knew some of them. I knew the quality of work. I knew some of the team
Yeah,
who had actually come over from different places. But when I started to look at the quality of work and the potential to actually have more of that up here in North America and Europe, to really bring in that new perspective, that new take on design, kind of the passion, and as I mentioned, the adaptability and resilience, I just became extremely excited about it. So for me,
good.
um, I love the work that we do. It's transformative, it's big, and it's absolutely design driven.
Brilliant.
So yeah, no. As you can see, I'm very passionate about it. Really excited to talk to anybody who wants to talk about Latin American design or what we're doing. Please
Great.
reach out. I'm happy to ramble on about it.
Good. Well, best of luck with that. I'm sure it's going to be a great success. And
Thank you.
lastly, away from design related questions, or it might be, could you please tell us something that few people know about you, Wayne?
Yeah. So I guess it is design related. I'm actually extremely colorblind. Um, I confused many colors. I used to think I was color dumb for the majority of my life until I
Right.
took an actual colorblind test and realized that it's the Ishihara test that shows you the dots and you see things in them. And I
Okay.
and I got 3 out of 24 correct. So it puts me on the
Great.
extreme end. So it's been a funny adventure in the design space. I'm not a visual designer, luckily, but still, I've had many presentations where I've had to actually ask people to say, "Is this bar chart here? Is that blue? Is that purple? Is that green? Is it red?" Or I'm presenting and I'm pointing something out, and somebody says, "Actually, that's a different color than what you're mentioning. Is it? Are you talking about something else?" I was like, "No, no, no. I'm sorry." So yeah, so I'm extremely colorblind. I still managed to make it work, and my wife has made fun of me for at least 30 years about it. So I don't take it too
Well,
seriously.
good for
But
you. Well,
yeah,
you certainly understand accessibility then.
yes, yeah. Very, very. Trust me, when it goes wrong, it can go terribly wrong.
All right. Well, Wayne, look, thank you so much for the chat. Really appreciate it. There's some really interesting takeaways there. Great for people to be cognizant and aware of the talent emerging out of Latin America in terms of design, and to reach out to you if they ever want to discuss that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thank you for your time. Thank you for the events that you've run here in New York as well that I went to recently. It was phenomenal.
Good.
Highly recommended.
More coming
And
up.
yeah, more coming up. Yeah, let me know. No, let me know and definitely come up. And no, thank you
Thanks,
so
Wayne.
much.
Thanks
Really
very much.
appreciate it.
We'll
And we'll
see you
talk
soon.
soon. All
Bye
right,
now.
take care. Bye bye.